Good evening. This is Flash News, the newest events presented with Polish perspective. I'm Karolina Pajączkowska. Welcome to the show. We start with the islands because Britain said farewell to the Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Philip was laid to rest in St. George's Chapel. The intimate ceremony was attended by 30 people only, in accordance with the rules that currently prevail in England. There was a modest procession with the participation of the closest members of the royal family, a minute of silence and a funeral service under a sanitary regime.
They came here from all over UK, despite pleas and appeals, despite the lockdown still in place, paying homage to Prince Philip.
He served our country, and I'm half his age, so he served me all my life. And I just came to pay my respects and say rest in peace, and we'll miss you.
Everybody loved him, especially not just British by the looks of it. Everybody loved him, and it's not just going to be the royal family that are missing him.
They came to give thanks for over 80 years of service to Britain and the British people, for opening up the royals to the media and ordinary people, recalls in an interview with us Ian Turner, former photographer of the royal family.
And he allowed opportunities like television to come in, because what he saw was that the whole idea behind the royal family is continuity. And as he saw broadcasting opening up, communications opening up, he knew in order to keep the royal family in the public eye, he had to use methods to actually do that.
This is his last journey. The coffin containing the body of the Duke of Edinburgh was transported by a special Land Rover, a car whose body was co-designed by Prince Philip. The military parade included 730 soldiers from all branches of the British Armed Forces, including the most important unit for the Prince, the 1st Grenadier Battalion. It was in this unit that he served 42 years as a colonel. The funeral script was prepared many years ago under the codename Forth Bridge. The funeral ceremony was to be attended by 800 people. Due to the pandemic and restrictions in force, there were only 30 people, only the royal family and the closest friends. The list was personally approved by the Queen. Prince Philip was bid farewell by Elizabeth II, their 4 children, Prince Anne, Prince Charles, Edward and Andrew. The brothers, Prince William and Harry, were separated at the ceremony by Princess Anne's son, Peter Phillips. The brothers themselves, who have been divided by a difficult family relationship, announced the alliance in support of Elizabeth II. This is especially for their grandfather, Prince Philip.
He was supportive of all his family, but of course there are difficulties in families, as there are always difficulties in ordinary families.
For the first time ever, the male members of the royal family appeared not in military uniforms, but in suits with accepted decorations. Prince Harry opted out of participating in the royal family, Prince Andrew has legal and moral issues, and William has adjusted to the situation. To the British, Prince Philip was first and foremost the Queen's husband. They lived together for almost 74 years. Only he had a real influence on the decisions of the monarch. He was the only one she could always count on.
With one of my colleagues, Helena Schade, a royal photographer as well, and we got a very famous picture of him. Basically, they were at St. Paul's Cathedral, and there's a large amount of steps at St. Paul's before she could get to the car. And the Queen walked towards the steps, and she didn't look at Prince Philip, she just put her hand out. She knew he was there. She didn't even have to look.
During World War II, Prince Philip fought in the Royal Navy in the Pacific and Mediterranean. He gave up his military career for the Queen. He always cared about family unity and extinguished family conflicts. In the UK, he pioneered in the modernization of the monarchy. Prince Philip was the patron and president of some 800 mainly charitable organizations. For this long-standing activity, he will be remembered. He threw himself into helping those in need. He set up foundations, he set up various funds. A very difficult time has come for Elizabeth II.
The end of an era. And for the Queen herself, it is in a much more personal sense the end of an era, when you think that although they'd been married for 73 years, they'd actually known one another since they first met in 1939 for 81 years.
Britain's national mourning will end tomorrow. The royal family will mourn Prince Philip much longer.
This is Flash News. Now we are back to local news. It's time for a report from the front line of the fight against invisible enemy. More than 15,500 infections in the last 24 hours, more than 600 deaths. But we also have some good news. In the coming week, the government will launch almost 500,000 additional points of mass vaccinations. There are expected to be 7,000 of those across the whole country.
Vaccination in Stepnica, West Pomerania, is gaining momentum. Well, acceleration is major because I had initially a date for the 14th of May. The residents do not have to go to Szczecin to be vaccinated. The mayor organized a local point, provided doses of the drug. We have 2 vaccination teams, so practically every 4 minutes 2 people come in and 2 people are already vaccinated. For now, residents of Stepnica benefit. Within a month and a half, everyone will be vaccinated and it will be possible for people to come to Stepnica from surrounding towns. This is a micro scale. On the macro scala, they vaccinate here. On Monday, the mass vaccination point in Ostruda, the first one in Varmia and Mazury, will be opened. No one had to be asked. People who wanted to came forward, and thanks to them, in 2 days, this point was created. Ultimately, 4,000 vaccinations per week are to be performed at this point. The territorial defense soldiers will be watching over the order, so here the uniformed and medical services are ready to start everything at 11 a.m. on Monday. Today, people born 1967 could register for vaccinations on Monday, a year younger. If we want to return to normal functioning without masks, we should simply get vaccinated as soon as possible. The acceleration of the vaccination campaign is possible because more of the drugs are reaching Poland. Today, 204,000 doses of Moderna were delivered to the Strategic Reserves Agency warehouse. From there, they will go to vaccination centers like the one in Kielce. This place has been in full swing since 8 a.m. There's no shortage of people willing to do it. Finally, to be normal in Poland. Everywhere you go, everything is closed, you can't get anywhere. There is nothing to be afraid of. What was the procedure like? Everything was very well organized. Poland will receive about 4.5 million doses of Pfizer vaccine in the second quarter. Last year at this time we said we would wait a minimum of 2 years for the vaccine. If all goes according to plan, initial collective immunity could be reached by Poles as early as the middle of this year.
Despite the pandemic, the German-Polish community paid tribute to the victims of the Nazi German concentration camp in Ravensbrück. Thousands of Polish women, most of them active in the Polish underground state, were murdered there by the Germans. The official celebrations of the liberation of the camp were cancelled, though.
132,000 women went through the hell of Ravensbrück. These roses from Poles living in Germany are for them. Our compatriots have come here to pray and pay homage to the victims of German bestiality. To pass on to the younger generation what happened here, they won't learn it from books in school. Torture, medical experiments, starvation and disease were also extremely difficult conditions for the women who came to Ravensbrück pregnant and forced to give birth there. German, Russian, Jewish and French women were sent to the camp. Polish women were the most numerous. As many as 1/3 of the female prisoners incarcerated here were Polish, so it's good that the Polish community has taken such an initiative to honor their memory. Nuns, teachers, Girl Scouts, in total the Germans imprisoned about 40,000 Polish women in Ravensbrück. Only about 8,000 survived. Among these prisoners were participants of the Polish underground state, the Home Army, participants of the Warsaw Uprising. They were forced to perform hard labor and died of exhaustion and starvation. Polish women prisoners were either shot by the Germans or murdered in the gas chamber. Those girls walked bravely, they did not cry, they did not despair. Very often they were still brave ones who said goodbye or said, Poland is not yet lost. Ravensbrück is still an undiscovered history. Only 2 years ago, the Institute of National Remembrance discovered urns with the ashes of cremated Polish women and plaques identifying the victims near the former camp cemetery. For us Polish Scouts, especially those living in Berlin, this is a very important place because a Girl Scout troop also operated here. The Girl Scouts of Ravensbrück brought aid to the most needy ones in the camp. The Germans murdered over 90,000 people here.
This is Flash News and still more to come. Now we will talk about a royal disease. It is so called because of the most famous people affected by it. But anyone can get hemophilia. 1 in 10,000 newborns has a problem with blood clotting. The disease is incurable, but it is possible to fight its effect, about which it is important to report, especially today on World Hemophilia Day.
The smallest injury ends with him having a hemorrhage and joint pain. When Hubert was 8 months old, doctors diagnosed him with hemophilia. You have to be very careful, you have to watch yourself. For example, when carrying shopping, I can get hemorrhages on my hands, and for the next a few days, I might just have less range of movement in my hands. To prevent this from happening, hemophilia patients must take what is called the blood factor. This is a protein that they are genetically deficient in. It works like insulin for a diabetic. Without it, dangerous complications and even death occur. After the factor is given, there is less risk of joint damage, less risk of hemorrhage. These boys can function normally. It is true that they have to get the factor 2 or 3 times a week. Thanks to the National Hemophilia Treatment Program introduced a year and a half ago, patients have continuous access to the drug. Life of hemophilia patients in Poland has improved significantly. What still needs to be changed is the establishment of treatment centers for adults in each province, so that the patient is taken care of. Interestingly, women are carriers of hemophilia, but it is men who get the disease. The most famous carrier was British Queen Victoria, who passed the disease to her son, Prince Leopold. Russian Tsarevich Alexei was also suffering from hemophilia. The care today versus back in the day when this disease was just being recognized is just not comparable. At the moment, our boys are living life to the fullest, taking full advantage, living like their peers. But one thing hasn't changed. There is still no miracle formula that will fully cure hemophilia.
So in Poland, spring cleaning is very popular. Now we will talk about very special action. Over 3,000 people joined the 3rd edition of the nationwide Clean River Operation campaign. Volunteers with bugs and gloves appeared in over 200 places in 14 voivodeships. Total, they managed to clean up the beds of the Narew, Bug and Warta rivers. Congrats.
What can you find in the river? Unfortunately, all the worst things and things that take a very long time to decompose. Old tires, cans, bottles and even fridge doors. These were found in rivers by volunteers taking part in the Operation Clean River campaign. Why are we cleaning up? To save the fish and different animals that live in the water. The operation started already on the 22nd of March, the World Water Day. During this time, almost all over Poland, over 200 staffs have registered, over 340 cleanup actions have been organized, in which over 4,500 people took part. You have to take care of the environment. I don't know how it's possible to leave such dirt behind. We want to support such actions. It is promotion of caring for the environment. In Waniewo at the Narew River, about 40 people took part in the cleanup. Over 20 bags of waste were collected. We have created ZAZ Krzyżewo in the Tourist and Rehabilitation Center. It is a unique staff, most of whom are disabled people. They were not afraid of the rain and penetrating cold. In Sosnowiec, canoeists and walkers clean up the Biała and Czarna Przemsza rivers. The residents themselves did amaze me. We lacked diplomas, we lacked bags. But there is still a lot of garbage left. We just all have to clean up, not a campaign, but all year round we take home the garbage we've thrown away. That's it. As you can see, for many it is still that much. The organizers appeal that the 3rd edition of this year's auction could be the last one.
Last but not least, we present you curiosities from all around the globe, despite the fact that since Monday, people in England can go to hairdresser or beauty salons again. Well, making an appointment is not a simple task. Salons are overcrowded, the queues are long, almost as long as a hair that hasn't been cut for months now.
First, a prolonged waiting time because of coronavirus, now because of queues. Even people who have not been frequent visitors to hairdressing salons in England want to get in, but everyone has to be patient. There are so many people who want to get their hair cut, colored and modeled. The queue to the barber's chair is also lengthened by new restrictive hygiene rules. Cutting the number of stands to keep social distance is no less important than cutting hair. No one is splitting hairs in this matter. Social distance, despite the opening, is also in effect at Universal's Hollywood movie studio. It just opened its doors to the public. The largest amusement park in California exists here. Here you can move into lands previously known from the screen and forget about the real world. Only masks and disinfectant liquids spread out in almost every corner remind you of it. The town of Spalding in the northeast of England is sometimes called the capital of tulips. It is here that festivals of these spring flowers have been held since 1951. The pandemic damaged the tradition but did not destroy the plantations. They still exist around town and the local garden continues to delight with its abundance of tulips. Daffodils and hyacinths have appeared here and there, but for now they are a minority of species. Encountering a sea lion in the forest inland is as likely as a brown bear bathing in the Baltic Sea. However, a Canadian man driving along a forest road in the province of British Columbia saw such a lion, or stellar sea lion. It was 6 kilometers from the ocean, the mammal's natural habitat. The man called for help. Experts determined that the lionfish had lost its orientation while swimming in a cove.
And that's a wrap. Thank you very much for joining us on Flash News. Have a beautiful evening and see you tomorrow, same time, same TVP Info. Goodbye.